Good evening, deep divers. Welcome to Late Night Psych with Rosie. I'm Rosie, and this is my first vertical live. So, of course, I'm doing it late so that I don't get overwhelmed. Heard it could be fun, and I thought I'd give it a try. I ran a few tests to check my sound, and everything seemed okay. So, hopefully, my sound is good. If you're tuning in and listening, please give us a thumbs up. Say hello in chat. Everybody is welcome to chat. Let's just keep it classy, y'all. So, I had a few things going on this week. Listening to the Lindsay Clancy trial, and it's exhausting. But we're not going to talk about that tonight. We're going to go through a few things, and I am going to start with some of my wall postings, or at least one of them. I don't assume that anybody reads the wall, but if you like my work and you like the deep dives that we do here on the channel, I definitely recommend that you look at the wall as we post a lot of information. We share archives, we share photographs and short blogs. We also have a Facebook group, which we go a little bit deeper. We go into different topics. And we've been having a lot of fun behind the scenes here. So I am going to start with something I posted a few days ago. We're going to travel back in time to November 14th, 1979. And although this is not in the psych category, it is just something fun that I like to share, especially for those who don't think that anything shady or wonky goes on in the Yonkers area. And this is an archive from the Mount Vernon Argus. It's written by Ed Trapasso, and the column is titled Satanic Ritual is Witnessed in Yonkers Area. Westchester County Police are investigating a bizarre satanic-like ritual witnessed over the weekend by a police officer in North Yonkers. The eerie discovery was made shortly after dusk Saturday on county-owned Stillwell Estate on North Broadway, where at least 5 persons, including one wearing a red cape and holding 2 German shepherds on a leash, were seen participating in a ceremony similar to those practiced by devil worshippers. The 5 participants fled when a county police officer interrupted the ceremony at about 5 p.m. The officer had been sent to investigate reports of chanting and the sounds of rattling chains emanating from the sprawling, partially wooded estate. The property is only a half a mile from Untermeyer Park, where a satanic cult allegedly linked to the Son of Sam killer, David Berkowitz, conducted black masses and other satanic rituals. A series of recent articles in Gannett Westchester newspapers revealed that members of that cult may have aided Berkowitz in a murder spree that left 6 dead and 7 wounded in 76 to 77. The apparent link between Berkowitz and the devil worshippers is the primary focus of the newly reopened probe by the Queens District Attorney's Office into the Son of Sam killings. But Westchester County police officials said Tuesday they do not believe the Saturday incident is connected in any way to the cult that may have aided Berkowitz, adding they do not plan to turn over information to the Queens investigators. Details of the Saturday incident were released Tuesday by county police officials. Carl Fugenzi, Deputy Commissioner of Westchester County Police, and Salvatore Diorio, Inspector in charge of the Detective Division, released the information after Gannett Westchester papers learned about the incident. According to police officials, the ceremony participants scattered into the woods when they saw the approaching police officer, but not before the officer saw a person who was the apparent leader of the group leading 4 or 5 others in a series of chants. The group leader was garbed in a red cape, somewhat similar to cassocks worn by priests, and was holding 2 leashes fashioned from chains. 2 large German Shepherd dogs were attached to the leashes, officials said. The group leader stood away from the ceremony's other participants, while the others stood with hands joined in a circle. A subsequent investigation also revealed 3 bizarre markings inside a carriage house located on the estate, one of several deteriorated buildings on the property. Written on the walls, officials said were "Welcome to Hell," "Entering Hell," and "Demon." Officials said, however, the graffiti may not necessarily be connected to Saturday's occult activity. Police officials said there is nothing to indicate the incident is related to the satanic cult tied to Berkowitz. That cult was last known to have been active in the summer of 1978. Members of that cult staged ritualistic black masses at Undermeyer Park, city-owned facility located at North Broadway, about a half-mile south of the Stillwell estate. The rituals involved the drinking of wine, blood, and urine, and possibly the sacrifice of German shepherds. We're interested in finding out who those characters are, Fulgenzi said about Saturday's incident. You can rest assured if this is the start of something, we will pursue it. Fulgenzi pointed out, however, that the investigation is focusing on possible trespassing or vandalism violations and not on possible connections to the Berkowitz case. But we want to know what it's all about. We're additionally interested for our own intelligence purposes, Fulgenzi said. According to Diorio, investigators were at the Stillman estate the day after the incident, Sunday, but failed to locate anything unusual. Investigators were again at the scene Tuesday afternoon. If we see something that warrants a wider investigation, it will be done, Diorio said. So yeah, I had posted that on my wall. Again, I don't assume that everybody's looking at the wall. And again, I believe you should, because we're putting out a lot of great information. One of the other things I've been working on behind the scenes, which is part of the CRTC SOS timeline and housed on the arrest slide, is a full legal and psychiatric procedures module. And we take it from the time of arrest till the time of sentencing. So many people say, well, there was no trial, he pleaded guilty, and it was shut down. And that sounds ultra simplified. It was actually, the legal proceedings, that is, was actually very detailed. I'm going to jump back. Give me a moment. I see a few people lingering. I wish you'd try a chat just so that I can see that it's working. Help a girl out. Come on. Don't be shy. On the psych side, we're going to talk a little bit about Dr. Daniel Schwartz. He offered psychiatric consult that is, as early as June 1977. Of course, we know that David Berkowitz was arrested in August of 77, But as early as June, Dr. Schwartz was interviewed by Newsday and offered some of his professional views. From the interview, how a psychiatrist views the city's .44 caliber killer. Dr. Daniel Schwartz, at the time he was 44, and this is going back again to June of 77. The director of forensic services at Kings County State Hospital in Brooklyn and associate professor of psychiatry at Downstate Medical Center there, an expert witness at dozens of major criminal trials in the Metropolitan Avenue and around the country over the last decade. Schwartz also maintains a private practice in Cedarhurst. Newsday reporter Edward Hershey talked with Schwartz last week about the Son of Sam, or the so-called .44 caliber killer, who has killed 5 persons and wounded 4, remember this is back from June, last July, in 6 random attacks on young women in Queens and the Bronx. The killer recently wrote 2 cryptic letters that have become the focus of speculation about his twisted personality. So I'm going to give you a little summary first, and then I'll read you some of the questions and Dr. Schwartz's responses. So a little summary here about the interview, give you a little context. Newsday interviews forensic psychiatrist Dr. Daniel Schwartz for a psychological profile of the .44 caliber killer. The psychological motivation. Schwartz suggests the killer's cryptic letters and aliases stem from a deep need for fame and power, likely compensating for a lifetime of feeling rejected or unnoticed. Public perception versus legal sanity. Remember again, this was done before the arrest. Although the public sees him as a quote-unquote sick, Schwartz believes a jury would view him as a threat and hold him criminally responsible rather than grant an insanity acquittal. The initial murder serves as a major psychological threshold. Once crossed, subsequent killings became easier for the perpetrator. Ethics and next steps. Schwartz notes that patient confidentiality would be waived if a doctor knew the killer's identity, but emphasizes that true psychological motives cannot be confirmed until the killer is captured and directly examined. So before I get into the specifics, I did put together a few key points and insights from Dr. Schwartz. Meaning of the names and letters. The killer's self-given nicknames, the Duke of Death, Wicked King Wicker, etc., and cryptic letters reflect deep personal meaning, a desire for self-strength, and a craving for public recognition or attention he likely lacked growing up. He addresses public figures like Jimmy Breslin because they represent traits, outspoken and honest, he felt were missing in people from his past. The first victim. The killer's obsession with his first victim, Donna Loria, marks a psychological threshold. After the first murder, committing subsequent killings become easier. If you're just joining us, welcome to Late Night Psych with Rosie. We are talking about Dr. Daniel Schwartz and an interview that he had with Newsday dated back to June 1977 before the arrest of David Berkowitz. Public perception and criminal responsibility. While the public views him as a sick man, juries generally focus on the danger a killer poses to society. Dr. Schwartz believes that if caught, the killer would likely be found criminally responsible rather than declared legally insane. Remember, upon his capture, Dr. Schwartz was one of the first doctors that said he wasn't fit to stand trial, although that we know that that changed. But interesting that in June of 7, he was saying this. Psychological profile. The crimes are driven by personal vendetta, revenge, or psychological triggers rather than pure logic. While there is a clear pattern to the killings, the underlying motivation remains unclear because true experts cannot definitively diagnose a suspect without examining him directly. Comparisons to other cases. He draws minor parallels to letter-writing criminals like George Batesky, Mad Bomber, and Calvin Jackson, but emphasizes that his specific type of killer is extremely rare and difficult to understand without direct evaluation. Confidentiality versus public safety. Again, these are my notes based on the interview. Dr. Schwartz notes that if a psychiatrist knew one of their patients was the .44 caliber killer, they would have a moral and ethical duty to notify authorities to protect the public. Conclusion. Little can be deduced with certainty until the killer is caught, makes a fatal mistake, or chooses to surrender. His letters suggest a mixture of boasting, teasing the police, and a subconscious plea to be stopped, but also noticed. So I gave you a little bit of context on the interview, and I gave you some key points that Dr. Schwartz made. I'm going to now go into the questions and answers. Don't know if I'll get into all of them tonight. Again, this is a test. I'm definitely hoping that the sound is good. Don't see anybody in chat at this point, but I'm just going to keep going. First question. In his second letter, Son of Sam offered us 4 nicknames: the Duke of Death, the Wicked King Wicker, the 22 Disciples of Hell, John Wheaties, rapist and suffocator of little girls. What might they really mean? Schwartz. It would only be speculation at this point. These names quite likely have some deep personal meaning to him, which he himself may not be consciously aware of. They may also be names he calls himself to help himself feel stronger. Question. He seems somewhat preoccupied in one letter with his first victim, Donna Loria of the Bronx. Why? Schwartz. The first victim was a threshold for him. It's likely that he never killed before. Like the first time you have intercourse is always the most difficult. So he would speak of that and remember that most vividly. After that, I suspect, unfortunately, the killings came easier for him. Question. There are also gratuitous references to the police. He wished the detectives luck, urged them to stay with it, and said that when he was captured, he'd buy each one a new pair of shoes. Schwartz. I surmise that he enjoys this publicity. He enjoys being able to tease the whole city. The fact that the whole police department is knocking itself out looking for him. One can speculate, again, that this young man probably never was very popular or very much, what shall we say, public acclaim. This is his claim to fame. I picture him as a rather shy young man who's felt hurt and lonely. It's unfortunate that this is the way he's finally gotten recognition. Question. But isn't it tearing him up that still nobody knows him personally, realizes he's the one in all these headlines? Schwartz. In part, that's why he's come to the point of reaching out to one particular person like Jimmy Breslin. One could suspect, too, unfortunately, that the people he had to deal with in his younger years he perceived as people who were not very warm, outgoing, or honest, because Breslin is all of those things. Question: what you know, do you have any theories at all? Or from what you know, do you have any theories at all? Schwartz replies, only the most superficial general statements from what little we know, the kind any intelligent layman would have. These are not crimes of profit. These are crimes of some kind of personal vendetta or revenge. Why a woman like this or in this position? Why that should so trigger him is not clear. Speculation. Maybe this is a position in which he once caught his mother or sister. Why the names? We really don't know. Question. Don't most people view the killer as a sick man? Schwartz. They view him as a sick man, which may sound more mature and more sophisticated, but when it finally comes down to it, they're also viewing him as a dangerous man. I don't think I have to tell you about the fear that exists in the community now. When it comes to the question, if it ever does, of criminal responsibility, despite the more sophisticated rules we have now, the better laws, I think most of the jurors are going to think of him in terms of my potential danger from this man. My first trial was not too dissimilar. James Farley, who raped a woman in Sunnyside and tore the body to pieces. I watched the jury come in at 2 o'clock in the morning with their verdict. They were unhappy when they found him guilty. They also felt this guy was dangerous and they just didn't want him around. Question: so if you had to speculate on what would become of the 44 caliber killer if he gave himself up, you would guess that he would be held criminally liable for his acts? Schwartz: yes, in view of how infrequently there is an insanity acquittal, especially when the accused is not an intimate or personal friend or family member of the victim, which doesn't mean that such a person won't get help once he is in the Department of Corrections, although that too represents a problem. You are aware, of course, of the escape of the men last month. Question: from what you know, does the 44 caliber killer case assume a pattern that is a classic example of a particular psychological disorder? Schwartz: certainly, there is a pattern involved if the man is doing the same kind of crime repeatedly. What it means, I don't know. You must understand this kind of crime is extremely unusual. It's got the city scared stiff. It's gotten good publicity, but we just don't know that much about this kind of person. It just doesn't happen that often. That last case I can think of, in fact, the only one I could think of that was in some way similar in this was Calvin Jackson, the young man who killed possibly a dozen women in the hotel on the west side of Manhattan. It was a different kind of scene then. Even though that many people were killed, it didn't capture the kind of publicity that this case has. The victims were lower class people, and many of the cases weren't even recognized as murders at first. But Calvin Jackson killed about a dozen women over a period of time, and there was a pattern to his killing. This man is still different, in the sense that he has taken to writing letters. In that sense, he's similar to George Metesky, whom we used to call the Mad Bomber, who had the city terrorized even though he never killed anybody. He would leave notes, and that would just intrigue us as to who this could be and what was going on. Do you all find a problem with the police request that all analysts in the city plumb their files and their minds to try to match the 44 caliber killer's pattern with any of their past or present patients? Schwartz: None whatsoever. I understand and I agree that every physician has an obligation of confidentiality to his patients, but he also has a moral responsibility to the community. If he were to know that one of his patients was out killing people, I believe he'd have a moral and ethical responsibility. I would liken it to detecting a case of smallpox. I have an obligation to alert the authorities so that the rest of the people are not jeopardized. Question: Can you deduce very much about the 44 caliber killer, or is that impossible without talking to him? Schwartz: Even those that I have talked to afterward where there was a crime pattern, it has never been clear what has stimulated or provoked each specific act. Question: Then every assumption is just guesswork at this point. Schwartz: It's speculation. We have a right in treatment to make all kinds of reasonable speculation about the psychodynamics of our patient, but we have an obligation to confirm those speculations. Right now, all that anybody is saying would be based on speculation. Number one, because we are not personally examining this man or treating him. Number two, because there are so few like him. This is a very rare individual. Question: And after he gives himself up or is caught? Schwartz: I'd be able to tell you after a long time with him, possibly the psychodynamics of what led up to the crimes, why it happened. I'm not sure I'd ever be able to tell you why this particular individual committed violence instead of simply having fantasy in which he got the revenge he wanted. That really is the most difficult question that we in all of psychiatric profession are faced with. What differentiates the man of action who commits a physically violent crime from the man who simply fantasizes and never hurts anybody else? This is our last question that we have available from the interview. If you're joining us now, welcome to Late Night Psych with Rosie. Welcome, welcome. If you're listening, drop us a comment in chat. Question: From your vantage point, then, there is very little we can do now except wait until police catch this man or until he makes a mistake. Schwartz: Or until he is willing to come in. The notes he's written suggest some kind of boasting, some kind of teasing, daring people to catch him. At the same time, they may also represent a certain kind of plea for help. There is a notorious case in Chicago some years back in which a man killed a child and wrote on the mirror, "Stop me before I kill again." And the writing of the note, at some level, I believe, is also a plea to be caught and to be stopped. Much as killers do these terrible things, at the same time, many of them feel bad about what they've done. I can recall Calvin Jackson sitting in my office and telling me about killing after killing, and at one point becoming so revolted at what he'd done, he literally threw up. Again, that was a travel back in time to June 1977, and we had an interview of Dr. Schwartz offering psychiatric consult as early as 2 months before Berkowitz's arrest. He was interviewed by Newsday. I hope that the sound came through great on this vertical. It ran a little bit longer than I had expected, but I hope that you enjoyed what I shared. If you're catching this on the replay, please consider subscribing to the channel. Please let me know in comments what you thought about the Late Night Psych with Rosie. As we are overhauling our channel, we are focusing on other cases, other deep dives, and I'd really like to coordinate some interviews and do some more of these late night chats if they are something that the community enjoys or participates in. I find that participation is the most important thing, and everyone is welcome to chat with us. Again, we just expect you to be professional and keep it classy. We don't have to agree on a thing. We don't have to agree at all. But your questions, your comments, as long as you keep it classy, they are always welcomed and encouraged. Again, if you're catching this on the replay, consider subscribing, give us a thumbs up. And I think we went about a half an hour, so I am going to cut it here. Thank you so much for spending time with me on Late Night Psych with Rosie. Have a great evening. Peace.